Hey everyone. I don't really know why I'm writing this, but I guess I need to say it somewhere. Maybe if I put it into words, it'll stop replaying in my head. A few weeks ago, I was doing something completely ordinary, going through our joint insurance paperwork. My wife, Anna, hates that stuff. She says numbers make her dizzy, so it's always been my thing. I was sitting at the kitchen table late at night, half a cup of cold coffee beside me, going line by line through the renewal forms. Same policy we've had for years. Same amounts, same coverage. Until I got to the last page. The beneficiary section. It didn't say my name. It said Daniel R. At first, I thought I was just tired. Maybe I'd mixed up a client form from work. But no, our address, her signature, our policy number. Everything matched. Just, not the name. It hit me in waves, confusion, then disbelief, then that slow, nauseating sting of suspicion. I double-checked the date. The change had been filed 2 months ago. Without a word to me. I remember sitting there, staring at her signature. It was neat, deliberate, like she'd taken her time. There wasn't a single crossed-out word. When I asked her about it the next morning, she barely looked up from her coffee. "Oh, that must be a clerical thing. I'll fix it later," she said, as if it was nothing. She even smiled, that kind of calm, detached smile people give when they want you to stop asking questions. But my gut said something else. That night, I lay awake next to her, listening to her slow, even breathing. My mind kept replaying that name, Daniel R. Who was he? Why him? Over the next few days, I tried to push it aside. Maybe it really was just a mistake. Maybe our agent typed the wrong name. But then I noticed other things. She started taking her phone into the bathroom more often. Her work bag looked heavier than usual. And twice that week, she came home later than she said she would. I wanted to believe it was all in my head. God, I wanted to. But that signature, her clean, careful signature, haunted me. So one night, while she was asleep, I went back into her email. And that's when I saw it. A folder I'd never noticed before. Hidden under a mess of subfolders labeled tax, bank, mortgage. This one was simple. It was called Promise. And inside, the first file was named Daniel_R_transfer_2021. That was the moment my stomach dropped. I didn't open it yet. I just sat there, staring at the screen, trying to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, it was something innocent. But somewhere deep down, I already knew. This wasn't about paperwork anymore. This was something else. Something older. And I had no idea how far it went. I don't think I'll ever forget that night, the soft hum of the fridge, the sound of the rain outside, the glow of the laptop screen lighting up our quiet kitchen like a crime scene. I hovered over that file for what felt like an hour before finally clicking it. It wasn't a document. It was a bank receipt. A wire transfer for $5,000 made from our joint account to someone named Daniel Ross. The memo field read simply, annual support. My first thought was, she's having an affair. She's paying him off. Maybe it was some kind of blackmail. Maybe he had proof, messages, photos. My mind built every worst-case scenario it could. But then I noticed something else, the pattern. There were other transfers, too. One every year, almost to the day. Each one between $3,000 and $6,000. Always from her. Always to him. Always with the same note, annual support. The dates went back nearly a decade. That's when I realized these payments started before we were even married. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I opened the next few files in the folder, PDFs of emails, scanned receipts, even an insurance form I'd never seen before. It listed Daniel Ross as the emergency contact. The document was old, 2011, but the signature at the bottom was hers. Back then, I barely knew her. I remember just sitting there, cold all over. None of it made sense. Why would she keep sending money to a man she supposedly hadn't seen in years? Why hide it from me? Why pretend it didn't exist? At around 3 a.m., I heard the floorboards creak upstairs. I panicked and closed the laptop, pretending to scroll through my phone when she appeared in the doorway. She looked half asleep, hair messy, wearing one of my shirts. "What are you doing up?" she mumbled. "Couldn't sleep," I said, forcing a smile. She stared at me for a moment, and I swear her eyes flicked toward the laptop. Just for a second. Then she smiled faintly and went back upstairs. But that tiny look, that half-second flash of tension, told me everything I needed to know. She knew what I'd found. And whatever she was hiding wasn't meant for me to see. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat there, replaying every conversation we'd ever had, every time she said she didn't remember something, every late-night message she'd brushed off as work. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to ask her again. I was going to find Daniel Ross myself. The next morning, everything felt wrong. The house looked the same, smelled the same, coffee brewing, her humming softly as she packed her bag for work, but I couldn't unsee what I'd found. Every movement, every glance, felt rehearsed, like she was performing normalcy while I silently disassembled our life behind the curtain. After she left, I opened my laptop again. I needed to know who Daniel Ross really was. Google gave me hundreds of results, too many Daniels, too many dead ends. So I filtered by location, by dates. Eventually, one stood out, a small private company in our state, Ross Medical Transport. Its listed director, Daniel E. Ross, matched the account on the bank transfers. The name stirred something faint, like a memory I couldn't reach. I dug deeper, company registration data, local directories, archived news. Buried in an old regional paper from 2011, I found it. Local EMT praised for quick action in highway crash. The article was short, just a few paragraphs, about a young woman saved from a near-fatal car accident after her vehicle spun out on a wet road. The EMT on scene? Daniel Ross. The woman? Anna Lewis. I just sat there, staring at the headline. The date matched the earliest transfer in that folder. That was it, the connection. She'd been in an accident, he'd saved her life, and she'd stayed in touch. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The more I thought about it, the stranger it felt. If she owed him gratitude, fine, a thank you card, maybe a donation once. But annual payments? Hidden folders? Changing her insurance beneficiary to his name? It wasn't normal gratitude. It was a pattern. A promise. I found the email address linked to his company and sent a short message, pretending to be someone from an insurance agency needing to confirm account details for a client. I didn't expect an answer. But less than an hour later, he replied. His tone was polite, formal, even. But one line froze me. "Tell Anna she doesn't have to keep doing this." Doing what? I reread the message over and over, every word hammering my skull. He knew her. He knew exactly why she was sending the money. And from his reply, he sounded tired. Almost sad. That night, I printed the email and slipped it into my wallet. I didn't tell her I'd reached out. I couldn't. But every time I looked at her across the dinner table, laughing, pretending nothing had changed, all I could see was that man's name. Daniel Ross. The one she trusted with her life. The one she kept paying in silence. And now, for the first time, he was talking back. I couldn't focus on anything for days after that email. At work, I stared at spreadsheets without seeing them. At home, I watched her move through the house, her easy smile, her distracted touches, the way she avoided my eyes whenever I mentioned the insurance renewal. I felt like I was living beside a stranger, someone carefully performing the role of my wife. I told myself I'd wait. Think it through. But the truth? I couldn't stand the silence anymore. So one Saturday, I drove. The address listed for Ross Medical Transport was in a small industrial park an hour away. The kind of place you'd miss if you blinked: 2 warehouses, a faded coffee shop, a cracked parking lot lined with ambulances that looked older than me. I almost turned around twice before I saw him. He was leaning against one of the ambulances, talking to a mechanic, tall, mid-40s, gray streaks in his hair, calm in the kind of way that comes from seeing too much. I recognized him from the photo in the old newspaper article. I don't even remember walking up to him. My body just moved. "Daniel Ross?" I asked. He nodded slowly, wary. "Can I help you?" I told him my name. I told him I was Anna's husband. His eyes changed immediately, that flicker of recognition, followed by something else. Guilt? Sadness? I couldn't tell. He sighed and rubbed his jaw. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. That one sentence hit harder than I expected. "Then you know why I am." He didn't answer right away. Just looked past me at the street, like he was weighing every possible response. Then he said, "It's not what you think." It never was. I wanted to shout at him, demand answers, but something in his voice stopped me. There was no arrogance, no defensiveness, only exhaustion. "I saved her life," he said finally. "That's true. But what she never told you is that saving her wasn't simple." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope, yellowed at the edges. My name was written on it, my handwriting. Except I had no memory of ever writing it. He held it out like it burned to touch. "She asked me to keep this in case something ever happened. I wasn't supposed to give it to you. But I think you deserve to know." I took it, hands shaking. The paper felt brittle, fragile, like the air around it had weight. I wanted to ask what it was, why my name was on it, how I could have written something I didn't remember, but he was already walking away. "She made a promise," he said over his shoulder. "And she's been keeping it for both of you." I just stood there, watching him disappear behind the ambulances, the envelope heavy in my hand. That night, I sat in the car outside my house for nearly an hour before going in. I couldn't open it yet. Not with her inside. Not until I was ready. Whatever was inside that envelope, I knew it would change everything. I waited until she fell asleep. The house was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the faint sound of rain against the windows. It felt eerily similar to the night I found the insurance file, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for me to tear open something I couldn't undo. The envelope sat on my desk for almost an hour before I finally slid a knife under the seal. The paper inside was thin, folded twice, with my handwriting sprawled across it, messy but familiar. Except I couldn't remember writing a single word. The letter started simply. "If you're reading this, then something went wrong. I'm sorry." My pulse quickened. My throat went dry. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. She stepped into the road too fast. I didn't even see her until... The sentence broke off. The rest of the line was smudged, as if someone had tried to wipe the ink away. Below that, another line. "Daniel said he'd handle it. He said no one needed to know." I didn't mean to leave. I panicked. Tell her I didn't run because I didn't care, I ran because I couldn't face what I'd done. My whole body went cold. This wasn't about her accident. This was her accident. I kept reading, eyes scanning for anything that made sense. The final words at the bottom hit like a hammer. "If she ever finds this, please forgive her. She's protecting me the only way she knows how." I just sat there, letter trembling in my hands, unable to breathe. My mind kept looping the same thought, this isn't real. But the handwriting, it was mine. The phrasing, the rhythm, it all sounded like me. And then a memory flickered. Not clear, but sharp. Headlights. Rain. The smell of burning rubber. A flash of metal. I stumbled to the window, trying to breathe. I'd always thought that night years ago was just a fender bender. I hit something, or maybe a curb. I told myself I was tired, stressed. I'd had a drink after work. It was nothing. I drove home. But what if it wasn't nothing? What if the thing I hit wasn't debris, but her car? What if Daniel was the EMT who covered it up, and she knew? It was insane. It had to be. But the dates lined up. The accident in 2011. The first payment to Daniel. The start of her insomnia. I couldn't stop shaking. I wanted to wake her up, demand the truth. But the thought of hearing her confirm it, that I'd hurt her, that she'd spent years cleaning up my mess, it made me sick. I folded the letter back up, slid it into the envelope, and locked it in the bottom drawer of my desk. But I couldn't unsee the words burned into my head. She's protecting me the only way she knows how. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw headlights slicing through the rain and her face turning toward me. Morning light felt cruel that day. Too bright. Too ordinary. The world outside went on like nothing had happened, while inside my head everything had fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I made breakfast like always. Coffee, eggs, toast. She thanked me, smiled, kissed my cheek. I could barely look at her. Every casual gesture, every soft word, felt rehearsed, like we were acting out a marriage that had already ended. After she left for work, I sat at the table, the letter spread open again, the words staring back at me like an accusation. I read it so many times that the ink started to blur in my vision. Eventually, I decided I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I needed to hear her say it. That night, I waited until she came home. She looked tired, distracted, keys jingling as she dropped her purse on the counter. I told her we needed to talk. The air changed immediately. Her shoulders stiffened, her hand froze mid-motion. I placed the envelope on the table between us. She stared at it for a long time, then at me. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then finally, a whisper, "You found him." I didn't speak. I just waited. She sat down slowly, hands trembling, and pressed them to her face. "I didn't want you to know," she said. "Not like this. Not after all this time." I asked her who wrote the letter. She didn't answer at first. Then she nodded. "You did. But you don't remember." Her voice cracked on the last word. She told me about the night I'd driven home late after a work event, the rain, the wet road, the crash. She said she was the one in the other car. That I'd clipped her, spun her off the shoulder. I'd stopped, dazed, called for help, then blacked out before the paramedics arrived. Daniel found me unconscious, half-drenched, bleeding from my forehead. When the police came, Daniel told them it was a hit and run, that the other driver had already fled. He said he'd handle the report, and he did. No charges. No record. But afterward, she couldn't live with it. She tried to tell me once, she said, but I didn't believe her. I'd already convinced myself it was a simple accident. So she made a choice to keep it buried. To keep me safe. Her payments to Daniel weren't hush money, she said, they were his condition. His way of ensuring no one ever reopened the file. I just sat there, numb. Listening to her confess that our entire marriage was built on silence and guilt. When she finally looked at me again, her eyes were red, swollen. "You didn't mean to hurt me," she whispered. "But I couldn't let you destroy yourself when you found out." I wanted to scream. To rage. But instead, I just whispered, "So you've been protecting me." She nodded. "Protecting us." Then, softer, "But I don't know who I've been living with anymore. The man I married, or the one who forgot what he did?" I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know either. For the first few days after that conversation, the house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by silence. She tried to go back to normal, but I couldn't. I'd catch myself staring at her across the kitchen, wondering how many times she'd looked at me with that secret lodged between us. I kept telling myself that I believed her. That I accepted what happened. But something about her story didn't sit right. If Daniel had covered it up to protect me, why keep taking her money? Why the promise folder? Why the secrecy even after all these years? It felt less like protection and more like control. I went back to Daniel's email, the one where he wrote, "Tell Anna she doesn't have to keep doing this." It didn't sound like a man being paid off. It sounded like someone ending an arrangement he'd grown tired of. And then another detail surfaced, small, but sharp. She'd said the accident happened after I left a work event. But when I checked my old calendar, I realized that night wasn't one of my scheduled events. It was a personal day. I didn't have an alibi. The memories started creeping back in flashes. The sound of rain. A curve in the road. The faint light of another car. A scream. But every time I tried to focus, it slipped away, like something deliberately blurred. One evening, I decided to test her. I asked casually, "Do you still talk to Daniel?" She froze mid-step, just a flicker, but I saw it. Then she smiled, too quickly. "No. Not for years." Lies always sound rehearsed. Hers was perfect. Later that night, while she showered, I checked her phone. I didn't find his number, she'd probably deleted it long ago, but I found something else. A recent transfer notification. Same amount as before. Same note. Annual support. The last payment had been made 2 days ago. So much for not talking to him. I copied the account number and ran a quick search. The results didn't lead to Daniel's company anymore. The account had been closed and redirected to a new one under a different name. A name I didn't recognize. It wasn't Daniel Ross. It was Emily Ross. His wife. That night, as I sat there staring at the screen, something inside me broke again. This wasn't just about guilt anymore. It was about something deeper, something that tied all of us together in ways I still didn't understand. And if Anna had been lying about this, what else had she been lying about? I didn't sleep. The name Emily Ross looped through my head like static. If Daniel had been the one taking the payments, why would they suddenly start going to his wife? And why now, after he told me Anna didn't have to keep doing this? By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I found Emily's business listed online, a small floral shop about 40 minutes away. I told myself I was just going to look. Just to see. But deep down, I knew I wanted answers Anna would never give me. When I walked in, the bell above the door chimed softly. The shop smelled of eucalyptus and old wood. Behind the counter stood a woman in her mid-40s, kind eyes, tired posture, the kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep but from life itself. "Can I help you?" she asked. I hesitated, then told her my name. Said I was looking for Daniel. Her expression changed instantly, not surprise, not confusion, but something like recognition laced with dread. "You're Anna's husband," she said quietly. I didn't even get the chance to ask how she knew before she added, "You shouldn't have come." I told her I needed to understand what was going on. That I'd found the payments, the letter, everything. She looked away, her voice flat. He wasn't supposed to get involved again. Not after what happened. That phrasing, "get involved again," hit me hard. "You mean the accident?" She let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's what she told you?" The air felt like it cracked between us. "She didn't tell you the truth," Emily said. "Daniel didn't just save her. He protected both of you, but not for the reason you think." My chest tightened. "Then tell me." She turned to a drawer behind the counter and pulled out a small file, old papers, yellowed edges, the top page marked claim number 4421, closed case. "Daniel kept this after the investigation," she said. "He always said if the truth came out, it would destroy 2 families." I flipped through the pages with shaking hands. The report described the crash, the location, the time, the weather, all matching Anna's story. But one line at the bottom caught my eye. Impact source, unidentified vehicle. Estimated collision angle inconsistent with eyewitness account. Eyewitness. I scanned down the page. The witness name hit me like a punch. Anna Lewis. She hadn't just been a victim. She'd seen everything. Emily's voice broke the silence. Daniel found her on the roadside. She was in shock, bleeding, repeating one thing over and over, "He didn't mean to." My breath caught. So she knew it was me? Emily nodded slowly. From the start. I leaned on the counter, dizzy, my pulse hammering in my throat. She made him promise not to tell, Emily said. Not the police, not you. But Daniel couldn't live with it. That's why he asked for the payments, not for money, but as a way to keep her tied to the secret. To remind her of what she'd done, and what you hadn't. I stared at the papers, feeling the weight of every lie collapse at once. I thought I'd uncovered the truth. But all I'd done was open another door, and behind it, the story was darker than anything I'd imagined. Because if Daniel had been using her guilt all these years, what did that make me? When I got home that night, I sat in the driveway for almost an hour, engine running, headlights off. The house looked peaceful, the porch light glowing warm, curtains drawn. You'd never guessed there was a secret buried inside it that had been poisoning everything for over a decade. Anna was sitting on the couch when I walked in, a glass of wine untouched on the table beside her. She looked at me once, and I knew she could tell I'd seen Emily. Where were you? She asked softly. Seeing someone who told me the truth, I said. Her hands tightened around the stem of the glass. You shouldn't have gone there. She told me everything, I continued. How you weren't just in the crash. You saw it. You knew it was me. She didn't deny it. Her silence was worse than a confession. So all this time, the money, the secrecy, the insurance change, it was all part of your promise to him? Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. It wasn't a promise to him. It was to you. I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. To me? By lying to me for years? By letting another man control you and us? She flinched. You think I had a choice? Daniel saved you that night. He could have turned you in. You were drunk, you blacked out, and you would have gone to prison. Her voice cracked. I begged him not to report it. I told him you'd never survive that kind of guilt. So yes, I paid him every year. Because that's what it took to keep it buried. Her words hit like shards. Every image I had of her, the woman who smiled in family photos, who said she loved me, twisted into something else. Not fake, but built on pity. You built our life on this lie, I said quietly. Every anniversary, every vacation, every moment we called happy, it was all just you trying to make up for what I didn't remember. She finally looked at me, eyes red, makeup streaked. I was trying to save you, she whispered. Don't you understand? You were the one who hit me, and I was the one who forgave you. I thought if I kept the truth buried long enough, maybe we could both start over. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The clock ticked loudly in the background. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding, so why now? Why change the beneficiary? Why send him money again after he said it was over? She exhaled shakily. Because Daniel's dead. I froze. She continued, voice trembling. He died 3 weeks ago. His wife asked for one final payment, said he'd left something for me. A letter. I could barely process it. What kind of letter? She turned her gaze toward the kitchen, where her purse sat on the counter. It's still in there, she said. I haven't opened it yet. I followed her eyes. The purse. The envelope. The air between us was electric, suffocating, a decade of lies suspended in one breath. And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because whatever Daniel Ross had left behind wasn't just meant for her. It was meant for me. I unfolded the letter slowly, the paper trembling in my hands. Daniel's handwriting was neat and unhurried, each line pressed deep into the page like he wanted his words to last longer than he would. You were both victims that night. Anna of fate. You of your own guilt. The truth was never as simple as either of you believed. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Anna sat across from me, frozen, tears pooling but not falling. You didn't hit her. Your car struck the man who did. The room tilted. I read it again, each word pulling the ground out from beneath me. He fled before the paramedics arrived. I found you both, her bleeding, you unconscious. I made a choice, to tell her you were the driver. She needed a reason to forgive, to move forward, and I gave her one. I stopped breathing. My eyes darted to Anna. She was shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, that's not true." But the letter went on. She built her forgiveness around a lie, and you built your love on her forgiveness. I never corrected it. I told myself I was protecting you both, but I was protecting myself. She reminded me of someone I once failed to save, and I couldn't fail again. I let the guilt become currency. I told her to make the payments because I didn't know how to let her go. I blurred the line between duty and desire, and by the time I saw the damage, it was too late. I felt sick. Daniel hadn't just saved her. He'd used both of us to fix his own broken conscience. At the bottom of the page, one final line. If you're reading this, I'm sorry. She didn't lie to hurt you. She lied because she thought the truth would ruin you. Don't let it ruin her instead. I folded the letter back up, my hands shaking so badly it nearly tore. Anna finally looked at me. Her voice was barely a whisper. So, all this time, I hated myself for something I didn't even remember right. She stood, but her legs gave way, and I caught her before she fell. She was sobbing into my chest, and for the first time in years, I didn't pull away. I didn't forgive her. I didn't accuse her. I just held her. Because for the first time, neither of us knew who we were in this story anymore, the victim, the liar, or the one who'd been saved. Later that night, after she'd fallen asleep, I sat at the kitchen table again, the same spot where it all began. The letter lay beside me, Daniel's words echoing in my head. You didn't hit her. You saved her. And yet somehow, I still felt like the guilty one. Because love built on lies doesn't survive the truth, it just changes shape, quieter, heavier, impossible to escape. I don't know what will happen to us now. I don't know how to rebuild something that was never whole to begin with. But maybe that's why Daniel wrote the letter, not to absolve us, but to force us to live honestly, even if it hurts. Would you call it love? Or just guilt with a heartbeat?